It's our pleasure to welcome now Andy Berry. He's a state senator, represents District 35. That incorporates Copiah, Jefferson Davis, Lawrence, and Simpson counties. Is that still your district, Senator?
That is it. Yes,
okay.
Sir. Yes, sir.
And also, of course, the executive director of the Mississippi Beef Council. Senator, good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming in.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me this morning.
So we wanted to have you in because we've been talking somewhat about all of the action, you could say, in the beef industry. And, of course, folks are seeing the prices of beef at the store. We've had some industry analysts. I think the CEO of Omaha Steaks a couple of days ago said to expect that ground beef would be in the $10 a pound range sometime in the first quarter of 2026. And so we know that obviously you're in that business, and as president, executive director of the Beef Council, the folks that are in the cattle industry in the state of Mississippi are part of that organization. That you're talking to these people every day. You're dealing with this directly. We wanted to hear from someone who literally knows the scoop on this rather than us guessing. Tell us what the status is. What's going on?
It's been a topsy-turvy month. Go back to the middle of October, 1st of October. President Trump tweeted about he was going to allow some more imports of Argentina beef. And so that started kind of a whirlwind of focus on beef trade, beef tariffs, beef pricing, which results in cattle pricing. And so he made another tweet, and put out some more stuff. And so what that went up doing here in Mississippi is it took away some value of our cattle that we sell. But, I was just sitting here looking when we was talking about beef, and I knew the current price of ground beef nationally is around $6 a pound. It's like $6, $6.04 a pound nationally here in the United States. But you go back to 2023, and it was $5.43 a pound. Last year it was $5.71. I read that same article you did from the Omaha Steaks guy.
Yeah.
And I just, I'm not going to say it's not going to get there, but I find that very hard to believe. You're going to almost double beef prices in a year's time. And, fundamentally, nothing's really changed over the last year in our markets. We're still importing beef. President Trump even lowered some tariffs last week on Friday. Some of the reciprocal tariffs he did.
Right.
For example, Brazil was at a 50% tariff, and he took 10% reciprocal off of that. And so, that's going to allow a little bit more beef to come in from other places to help offset what we're lacking in production. And that's what's important to remember. In the United States, our beef production is down a little bit due to a decline in our numbers of cattle in the United States. You go back to 2022 even, we had the drought here in 23, but across a lot of the country, the Midwest and the cattle producing states, they had a drought in 21 and 22.
Okay.
And so you had a lot of sell-off of cattle, and so basically that's our factory to produce the beef, and so they're not there anymore. They haven't been replenished, and they had also had a drought in 23 and some other places in 24. And, a lot of these western states particularly, their grass doesn't rebound like it does here in Mississippi, and so it takes a little bit to get those ranges back in order to where they can handle cattle and where the producers can purchase cattle. When you supply and demand curve, we have fewer cattle out there, so the price has gone up, and so even those that have sold out, they can't buy back necessarily on the same market they sold even 2 years ago.
Okay.
And so we've got just a glut in supply, and so that's why the whole import and tariff issue is a problem. I was looking at some numbers. The United States produces about 27 billion pounds of beef every year. Now that's down a little bit because of the drought. It's been up around 30. We export just under 3 billion pounds of beef to other countries, and that's a lot of our higher value cuts. It's a ribeye, and then it's some parts of the carcass that we don't eat that other people demand and would pay better than what would go into dog food. But we import about 2 billion pounds right now. It's
okay.
So, but that's gone up. That's gone up since last year even, and it'll probably go up next year. And what the imports are primarily are what is called lean trim. So it's called an 80 or a 90 lean trim. So that's an 80% lean. That means it's almost all red meat. There's very little fat. And when you look at beef production across the globe, the United States does it different than most everywhere else. If you've been out Midwest, you've seen these large feedlots, grain-fed steer. That's what we look. USDA choice, grain-fed, or prime. That's what we eat. That gives you that good white fat. But across the globe, most everybody else does it on grass, and so that results in the fat, the flavoring to be kind of more of a yellow, a little bit more, not quite gamey, but a little different taste than what American consumers are used for. So we bring in their lean trim, cut their fat off, mix it with our excess fat, and that's where we get a lot of our hamburger, our ground beef from is from that. So that's where most of our imports are coming in, is going to fill that ground beef void that we have.
Okay. So, but is that overall, Senator, is that driving the price down? Is that having an impact on the industry?
So, again, we have the lowest number of cattle of the U.S. cattle herd since 1959. That's still kind of post-World War II vibes.
Got a lot more people to feed.
Got a lot more people to feed, but the American cattle producer is probably growing about not quite double the size of the animal. The size of the animals have changed. We've got very efficient, very good at producing beef. So back then, a 1,000-pound steer was a very big steer. Today, we're sending them to the slaughterhouses at 1,500-1,600 pounds in some cases.
Wow.
So 14 probably is the average. So you're producing a lot more beef off of a carcass than what you were.
I got you.
In 1959. We're just more efficient, like everything else.
Sure.
Efficiencies run the day. And so, it's a numbers thing. It's strictly supply and demand. And, beef pricing, I was thinking about it on the drive up here this morning. I sold some calves Monday at a local livestock market. Sent some more yesterday to another livestock market. And so I was the first producer. Before that meat that they ultimately turn into reaches your plate, probably at a minimum, it's going to be about 8 different transactions of ownership. Could be even more than that, depending on where it is. So tariffs have a big part in beef imports, have a big part in our beef pricing. But what the president did is not going to just snap a finger and fix any consumer price rise that we've seen, or certainly change it overnight. Argentina, what he talked about, bringing in more beef from Argentina. They currently, I got it wrote down here, they currently, year to date, have imported like 33,000 metric tons. It's not just a huge lot. When you compare it to like Canada, who's importing like 700,000 metric tons year to date.
Okay. And
so it's just not a lot of big movement when we started off with this Argentina thing to help the prices. Now, cattle producers are very sympathetic. They don't want people paying $10 a pound for it. I don't think anybody wants that.
Yeah.
But it is a supply and demand thing, and I think we've done a great job of meeting that demand with the supply we have, whether it be domestic production or bringing in some imports to mix in and fill that need.
Okay. Well, so is it true, though, that most of the reduction in the herd, so I hear, I didn't know this, but that we may have fewer cattle, but they're bigger cattle. There's more that is harvested, I guess, from the carcass. So is it true, though, that the main reason that the herd was thin is because of drought?
Primarily, yes.
Okay.
It's primarily. Now, there are some nuances in there.
Okay.
The age of our producer is much older than it was. I'm 51 years old, and I'm probably a younger producer in my neighborhood down there. By and large, we're older folks that produce cattle. So some folks have retired and moved out.
Sure.
The younger generation's not coming in. We did import some live cattle from Mexico.
Okay.
And due to an outbreak of a parasite down there called the New World screwworm, we have closed that border. And so we're not allowing live cattle imports currently across the Mexican border. And there's a big industry in South Texas, Arizona, down that way that people feed Mexican cattle that are brought over live and then harvest them here. And so we're missing out on some of that supply. And then, Trump did, when he put those reciprocal tariffs in early in his administration this year, he put reciprocal tariffs on all beef. That's what he removed this past Friday, and that kind of slowed down the flow of imports as well. So you couple those things together with the drought over a couple of years, the Mexican border closed, the imports, and that's been that's raised beef prices, but it's also been a windfall for cattle producers who've been seeing some very good profitable times this year.
And we had somebody on our text line yesterday that is a cattle farmer that said the same. Said, yeah, we're making more than we have, but we're making up for 3 or 4 really bad years.
Probably closer to 10.
Okay,
really bad years.
Well, if you can hang around when we come back, I'd like for you to explain just the supply chain, the ecosystem, to understand how it starts on the farm and ends up on the table. As you said.
We can walk it right through there. That's not a problem.
We're coming right back with Senator Andy Berry. He's also the executive director of the Mississippi Cattle Association. SuperTalk Mississippi. We're visiting with Senator Andy Berry. He's also the executive director of the Mississippi Beef Council. So before we went to break, Senator was asking if you could just explain the supply chain, if you will, how it goes from the farm, the product, to our plate. And I understand it could take different routes, but break that down for us a little bit.
I'll give you kind of the short, most basic version that can happen. So I'm a cow-calf producer. I have cows. I have a bull. Ideally they produce a calf every year, and so I'm gonna have that cow and calf, and the mama's gonna raise the calf till about 500-600 pounds. I'm gonna wean them and get them where they are eating feed and know what water is, and that's something you actually have to teach an animal that's been out on grass, and they have to get used to that. So, sell a weaned calf at a livestock market, and somebody probably from Mississippi is going to buy it, and they're going to take it home and turn it out on some higher quality forage. Mississippi is one of the best places in the nation to do that, particularly in the winter. And so they'll keep that animal, another 3-4 months, probably, maybe a little bit longer, till it reaches 700-800 pounds.
Okay. They're
going to put it on one of these big 18-wheelers that you see riding up and down the road, and they're going to either, one, sell it to someone that's going to feed it in a feed yard, or they're going to do it themselves, kind of on a consignment basis of where they pay the cost for that.
Okay.
So you're at 3 steps right there, and then at some point in time, it's going to go to the harvest floor, the packing house, and so that's number 4. The packer's going to buy it. So the packers will then probably either further fabricate it themselves, or all or part of that carcass, and some of it they'll sell off to some other fabricator where they'll cut steaks, or they'll grind it into hamburgers. So you're at 5 there, and there could be another. Selling that thing. But anyway, either the packer or the fabricator will then they'll either sell it to a major retailer, like some of our big grocery stores, and so you're at 6, or they'll sell it to a food service company, like a U.S. Foods or a PFG or any of the other ones that are out there. I can't remember all the Cisco, someplace like that. And so, you could be at, 7 now. And so then they're going to sell it to a restaurant. That's 8. So you could be, 8 or 9 transactions down the road before you get to where that thing touches your fork. Okay. And so that's why when I say the tariffs didn't really have a whole lot of effect on beef pricing, there's a lot of steps that go into, and so all those steps, you probably got 5 steps for an import, maybe 6 that they go through as well, different transactions. So everybody's got to try to make a little money along the way, and I think we as cattle producers want our industry segments to be profitable and want everybody to get along, and we want fair and transparent markets. That's in part of all this discussion. Senator Hyde-Smith with President Trump maybe 2 weeks ago, and that's one of the things that came out of that meeting is an investigation, Department of Justice investigation into the packing segment of our industry. And so, all that we want, and I think all that the senator wants is to make sure that we have fair, transparent, and competitive markets for how our beef kind of goes through. Everything's got to funnel through that packing segment. At some point in time, you've got to go through that packing segment, and then it kind of starts out broad, and it narrows down, then it goes that broad again after it funnels through the packing. So that's kind of a major key holder there in our segment. So we got to make sure that they're operating in a fair and transparent manner.
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. And the president actually went to his Truth Social platform, and he didn't state that he was alleging that they're engaged in collusion and price fixing and price manipulation. He stated that they are. Declared that they are.
There have been some cases, and there's one right now where a couple of them have admitted to some collusion on
Really?
on purchasing of cattle, and there's a settlement out there, class action lawsuit that's
Okay.
out there. You think about the beef packing sector, and you go back to the days of Chicago when Chicago was a major beef packing industry. Well, Chicago was also famous for something else.
Yeah.
That was the mob.
Yeah,
and,
draft.
and so there's.
Okay. Do you think they were involved in that?
No, I'm not accusing that, but I'm just saying that there's been a long distrust in our industry of the packing segment, and so that's all we want. It's just transparency.
Sure.
We want competitiveness. We want fairness. We want them to make a dollar. We want to make a dollar in our segment, and we ultimately want the consumer to be able to afford what we eat.
You can't sell it if you can.
No, you can't. You've got to have somebody, and that's what I think as our industry. You go back. We talked about the size of the cattle and the quality. Our cattle producers have done a great job of increasing the quality of the beef that we produce, and so that's why we've had this great demand. You very seldom nowadays, if you go to a reputable restaurant, are going to have a bad eating experience
I agree.
because of the quality of the meat.
I agree.
Now, there may be a cooking method or a preparation method or something that causes that, but by and large, it's not going to be because of the quality of the meat. And that goes back to the work that the American cattle producer has done.
Okay. So, and what's going on there, Senator? There's some new techniques, technologies, tools, resources.
It's just been an industry focus on what's called beef quality assurance, and so that goes everything from how we vaccinate, where we vaccinate on the animals, how we handle them, how we transport them, genetic investments that we've made in doing a lot of research into quality and tenderness. You can have what's called expected traits, basically, of you buy a bull. You can look and see that, hey, I expect him that he's going to have this amount of tenderness and quality of his carcass. You can even, like the size of the ribeye, you can expect him to have a bigger or larger ribeye size based on some genetic factors in his breeding line. So it's all those things that we're looking at to try to produce a good product for our consumers.
Sure. I'm concerned about something you said earlier, that we don't have a lot of young folks, right, entering the industry, and the industry is aging out, and that's an issue across the entire agricultural sector.
It absolutely is. The barrier of entry, the cost that it takes to get in, and that's one thing in my Senate service that I've looked at, particularly on property taxes. Everything that goes through the legislature, I'm looking at through a lens of how this is going to affect our property taxes. And so that's, you take the land that's needed, the equipment. Right now, if you were to buy a good cow, you're looking at $2,500 to $3,500 for a good cow right now. That's just one cow, and so you've got to hold that thing for a year before you get paid back. Plus, you've got the land, you've got the feed, you've got your tractors, you've got your property taxes. You've
in
got
a fickle market,
and with the volatility that we've seen, like I mentioned earlier. We've seen about $250, $300 a head be taken off in the last month due to these tweets to the value of our cattle. So, it's concerning. And look, and I think that, I struggle with it some days too. I work a town job, and then, I was at my farm this morning at 6 o'clock and did some things there, and then took a shower and came to Jackson. And I was down there last night to 9 o'clock filling up some water troughs. So not everybody wants to live that that life, and it's a way of life, and it's something you've got to be committed to. So it's tough for a lot of our new people. And we've seen some new folks come in, and I think we'll continue to see that. But by and large, it's tough across all sectors of agriculture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that sounds like a problem that's got to be addressed if we're attriting out just due to normal age, and we don't have young folks. So here's another question. I believe it was last year there were issues with the traditional row crop farmers getting financing for their crops.
Well, I think that
how's that going?
That's a tough segment right now. It is. They are similar to us in cattle. That they are very productive. They can grow an ear of corn, a bushel of corn,
yields are way up,
soybeans,
right?
bale of cotton, more efficient than they ever can. But due to just the pure cost of their inputs, compared to what the commodity market is worth, they can't outmanage losing on that. They can't manage their way into a profit just because
and have
the math
little or no
match.
control over what they sell their product for, right?
They don't. And so, we saw some reductions probably in acres planted this year, this growing season, and it really, really concerns me of what our row crop sector looks like next year. Our delta, I'm afraid we're going to see some fallow land. I'm afraid we're going to see some people that are not going to be able to extend credit, be credit extended to them to plant a crop. And I'm also worried about people have ate up a lot of equity, some lifelong equity these farmers have earned and gained, trying to hang on because a farmer farms. That's what we know how to do, and that's what we want to do. And it's just hard not to farm.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I know it was crisis level, right?
It still is.
Okay.
It still is. It's very concerning. Farmers of this state need everyone's prayers. I promise you.
Well, as always, we certainly appreciate you coming on. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll do it again. But most importantly, rather than us sitting on these mics and trying to guess at this, we want to talk to somebody that's actually doing this.
Be glad to come in anytime.
Yeah, appreciate it. Senator Andy Berry, also Executive Director of the Mississippi Beef Council. We're stepping aside for a break, coming right back.